As from today onwards, you shall know no peace. You shall beg for bread, but be offered stone. Your laughter shall fade into endless cries, and your words shall return to judge your own blood.
The three women said, as they laughed, sealing Amarachi's family fate. They say not every smiling face wishes you well, and that not all laughter carries love. The Okoyes were a family that many envied, and rightly so. Chief and Mrs. Okoye lived in the bustling town of Enugu, in a house that seemed to shine even at dusk. They weren't just rich, they were respected. Theirs was the kind of home people pointed at and said, God, do it for me too. Chief Okoye, a senior manager at Prozel Oil and Gas, was known for his integrity and soft-spoken strength. His wife, Amarachi, was the type who smiled through every conversation, her words smooth and generous, but often careless. She loved to share, to talk, especially when life was good. Their first son, Chuka, had just graduated from the University of Lagos with a first-class degree in economics and had earned a full scholarship to the University of California, Los Angeles. He was the pride of every mother on their street, a tall, humble young man who never walked past an elder without greeting, who led the church youth meetings, and tutored younger children in mathematics for free. Children in the neighborhood often chased after him, calling Uncle Chuka with smiles, and he would turn, laugh, and pat their heads. The second son, Chidera, was in his final year of computer science at the University of Benin. He was known across campus for his intelligence and calm nature. Lecturers often praised him, saying his project could easily be published in international journals. The last child, Adaeze, was in secondary school, preparing for her JAM exams and dreaming of becoming a nurse at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. The Okoye children were the pride of the neighborhood. They were respectful, brilliant, and close to one another. On Sunday mornings, when they walked to church dressed neatly in white and blue, people whispered, God truly blessed that family. One Sunday morning, when Amarachi walked into church, people noticed. Her dresses were crisp, her perfume delicate, her confidence radiant. She always carried herself with a soft dignity, the kind that made people stop mid-conversation. She had a way of lifting her chin slightly when she spoke about her children, not out of arrogance, but the overflowing joy of a mother whose labor had borne fruit. So when the Women's Fellowship met that same Sunday afternoon, after the close of service, Amarachi couldn't resist the urge to testify. She sat before over 20 women, hands clasped, eyes glistening, her voice firm but gentle. My sisters, she began, God has been faithful. My first boy, Chuka, is leaving for America next month. The younger one, Chidera, is almost a graduate too. And Adaeze, that one wants to be a nurse. My God is good. The hall erupted with applause and laughter. Some women clapped genuinely, others half-heartedly. But not all joy is pure. Among the claps were three slow, hollow sounds from Izine, the pepper seller, Ngozi, who fried akara at Abakpa Junction, and Nkem, whose husband's carpentry business barely fed their home. Their eyes met briefly, and in that look sat years of silent bitterness. Ezine's story was one of long struggle. Once a cheerful woman, her husband had left her 5 years ago for another woman in Asaba. She sold pepper at the corner of New Haven Market, often returning home with more debt than gain. Her eldest son, Emeka, had dropped out of secondary school to ride Okada, and her daughter was pregnant at 17. Ezine carried her pain like a heavy tray, balancing it daily without rest. Ngozi, the akara seller, lived 2 streets away. She had 4 children, all boys, and not one of them had finished secondary school. The oldest had been arrested twice for petty theft. Her husband was blind in one eye and spent most evenings drinking palm wine by the roadside. Ngozi's stall was her only source of survival, but it barely covered rent. Then there was Nkem, the quiet one. She helped her husband in his small carpentry shop, They lived behind a broken fence where rain leaked through the roof. She waited for her husband before eating because food was never enough for 2 meals. The three women were friends, not out of convenience but out of shared struggle. Their lives had been shaped by disappointment, and envy had slowly replaced their faith. So when Amarachi spoke that day, it didn't just remind them of God's goodness, it reminded them of their own lack. After the meeting, while the others hugged and chatted, the three stayed behind. Ezine whispered she thinks she's the only one God can bless. Ngozi snorted, let her enjoy it while it lasts. Nkem smiled faintly and said, some lights are too bright. They draw moths. They left the church that afternoon without saying goodbye to anyone. At home, Amarachi felt lighter than she had in weeks. She hummed as she cooked egusi soup, unaware that her words had already become seeds, drifting into the hearts of those three women. That night, under the pale light of the moon, far behind Ezine's shop, the three gathered in silence. They spoke of how unfair life was, how some women had it all while others begged heaven for crumbs. The air grew cold, the night thickened, and they whispered the names of the Okoyes, Chuka, Chidera, Adaeze, Amarachi, and their father. Each name carried a wish, not for blessing, but for loss. The wind stirred, and a dog howled in the distance. The next weeks moved quietly, almost too quietly. The first sign came when Chuka received an email saying his visa process had been delayed due to missing documents. He thought it was a simple clerical error. But then, 2 weeks later, another message arrived. The scholarship had been withdrawn. Amarachi told him it was a small mistake, something that could be fixed. But the university's follow-up message ended with, we regret to inform you that your offer is permanently withdrawn. The house grew silent that day. At Uniben, Chidera's troubles began with a small headache. He brushed it off, thinking it was just from sleepless nights studying, but the pain grew worse. It spread behind his eyes, then down his spine. His friends found him one morning, sitting on his hostel bed, sweating and weak. Bro, we need to take you to the clinic, they said, but he waved them off until he collapsed 2 hours later. The doctors ran tests, but found nothing concrete. His mother asked that he should be brought home for proper treatment. When exam week arrived, Chidera couldn't walk. He missed his second semester exams, especially the dreaded CS-C422 paper and his project defense, the final components he needed to graduate. Adaze's story was quieter. One morning she simply refused to go for her Jambi lessons. I'm tired, she muttered. Her mother thought it was ordinary fatigue, but weeks passed and her interest never returned. The books that once filled her table now gathered dust. When her results finally came, she scored 102. Amarachi wept silently that night. Meanwhile, Chief Okoye's storm was gathering. At work, whispers began to circulate. A document approving a transfer of company funds bore his signature, only it wasn't his. Someone had forged it, yet the internal audit named him responsible. Despite his explanations, the management suspended him indefinitely. He came home that evening, removed his shoes at the door, and sat on the couch without a word. In a single month, the Okoye's bright life began to crumble. At first, Amarachi believed it was a phase, one of life's temporary storms. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, hope began to dry up like rain on hot concrete. Bills piled up. The generator stopped running because there was no fuel. The once glittering kitchen that smelled of stew and fresh fish now stayed silent most days. Chief Okoye tried to hold his head high. He visited old colleagues, made calls, submitted applications, but each time the result was the same. We'll get back to you. No one ever did. Amarachi started selling her clothes. The expensive lace she wore to church, the gold chain from her 15th wedding anniversary, even the designer handbags her husband once bought her during oil company trips to Dubai. Each sale came with a fresh one, a memory she was forced to part with just to feed her family. Soon she began going to the market herself, something she hadn't done in years. Before, her house help would go ahead of her, bargaining loudly and returning with a basket filled with pepper, tomatoes, beef, and fruits. What do you want today? Just small pepper and tomato, Amarachi said softly. Ezine raised her brow. Only pepper and tomato? No meat? Amarachi shook her head slowly. Next time. Ezine's laughter was brief but sharp. The total was 3,400 naira. She stared at the money in her hand before giving it away. From buying tomatoes and pepper and beef worth 35,000 naira, she now bought those same things for less than 3,500 naira with no beef. The struggle was visible, but the pain cut even deeper. From a land flowing with milk and honey, she had fallen into one that tasted worse than bitter leaf. That night, as she cooked the small pot of soup, she broke down quietly in the kitchen. The steam from the pot mixed with her tears, and for the first time, she didn't pray. Her husband noticed. Chief Okoye had always been a man of faith, but even his strength was failing. He still gathered the family every morning for devotion, but his voice had lost its fire. His prayers were shorter, his eyes red. Then, a few weeks later, the devil truly took over. It was a hot afternoon when Amarachi heard a loud knock at their gate. But when she opened the gate, 3 young men stood there, rough-looking, faces hard. "Yes, who are you looking for?" she asked. "Now your son will they find," the tallest said. "Which of them?" Chuka, her heart skipped. "What happened? What is the issue, please?" The boy scoffed. "Madam, your son play bet. He say he go pay later, but it don't reach 3 weeks. We no see our money." Amarachi froze. The words hit her chest like a stone. "My son," she whispered. "My Chuka." The boys exchanged glances. "Madam, tell him make he pay, or we go disgrace him for the whole street." She stood there, unable to speak. When Chuka came home that evening, she didn't shout. "Chuka, is it true?" she asked. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Mommy, it's not what you think. I just wanted to try." She cut him off, tears filling her eyes. "Try what?" "From scholarship to gambling." He sat on the couch crying. "Mommy, I'm sorry." But sorry couldn't rebuild what had been broken. A few days later, Chief Okoye was seen at a construction site. A man who once wore suits to oil company meetings now carried cement and mixed sand for daily pay. "Baba Chief don't turn laborer," someone whispered. He pretended not to hear. Every sack of cement was like a blow to his pride, but he did it for his family. Chuka joined him. Together they became cheap laborers, moving blocks, sand and cement bags under the hot Enugu sun. Adaeze, the youngest, began to change too. She grew withdrawn, restless. Her old friends stopped visiting, replaced by a new group of girls who wore fake lashes and boasted about their rich boyfriends. They flaunted the latest iPhones and talked about clubs and hotels. At first, Adaeze only listened, but slowly, curiosity grew. She wanted to taste the world that seemed to smile at everyone else. Amarachi noticed the shift, the strange perfume, the secret phone calls. One night, she confronted her daughter. "Adaeze, where are you learning all these things from?" "Mommy, please, I'm tired," the girl snapped. "What's the use of all your morals? Look at us now." The slap came before Adaeze realized it. That night, she sat in the darkness of their living room, listening to her husband snore softly on the couch. She wanted to scream, to ask God questions, to demand answers, but she had no strength left. Her faith had become a distant echo. She remembered how, not too long ago, she had been scammed by fake pastors and prophets. One told her to bring 50,000 naira for a family cleansing. Another said her house needed spiritual fumigation. She obeyed them all, but nothing changed. The Bible, once her anchor, became just another book. The prayer points became noise to the ears of the tired, sleeping Okoye family. Her husband still went to the construction site, but his body was giving up. Chuka still followed him, not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't stand to watch his father suffer alone. Every morning they left together, carrying their shovels and wheelbarrow, and hoped that maybe, one day, something would change. Then one morning, something did, though not in the way anyone expected. Amarachi was returning from the market. She had managed to buy just a few tomatoes. It was all they could afford. Halfway home, she noticed a beggar sitting by the roadside, a frail old man, his clothes torn, his face dark from the heat of the sun. He stretched out a trembling hand and whispered, "Help the poor, madam." Amarachi paused. She didn't have much, but something inside her told her to stop. She dipped her hand into her pocket and brought out 500 naira, the last note she had after her purchases. She hesitated, then handed it to him. The man looked up, and his eyes met hers. "Madam," he said softly, "you have done what even the rich cannot do. You have given when you have nothing. But do you know why your house has turned from laughter to sorrow?" Amarachi froze. 3 months ago, the man continued, your tongue opened the gate that invited misfortune. Ironically, it happened in the house of God. among those who called themselves believers. Her breath caught. He went on, "You spoke with pride, and 3 hearts burned with envy. That night, under the moonlight, they gathered, 3 women, wearing the faces of worshippers but the souls of witches. They called the names of your husband and your children, chanting misfortune upon them. Their words became chains, tying your blessings to the ground." Amarachi's knees weakened. She stared at the man, trembling. "Who are they?" she whispered. The beggar shook his head. "You will know soon. On your way home today, the first 3 women you greet, they are the ones. Greet them, but don't hug them. Don't let them stay long in your house. And when night comes, wake your husband and pray. Not softly, but like a warrior. For 7 nights, call the names of every darkness that has mocked you." Before Amarachi could speak again, a wind blew dust into her eyes. She blinked, and when she looked back, the man was gone. On her way, she met Ezine, the pepper seller, at the junction going towards the market to resell her newly purchased pepper and tomato. "Amarachi, how far now?" she greeted, smiling too wide. Amarachi forced a smile. "Ezine, I'm fine. Good afternoon." They exchanged a few words. Then she left quickly. As she approached her compound, she saw the other 2 women sitting inside the balcony. They stood when they saw her. "Amarachi, we just said, let's come and check on you," one said, but her voice sounded heavy, too heavy. Amarachi's stomach turned. She greeted them calmly, but didn't invite them inside. Inside the house, she sank to her knees. It was all true. That night, she woke her husband. "Nana, we need to pray." He turned, weary. "Amarachi, please, not tonight. I'm tired." She shook him. "No, not tonight. Please." Something in her voice pierced his exhaustion. He sat up slowly. Together they knelt and began to pray. At first weakly, then louder, then with tears. For 7 nights, they prayed. The first 3 nights were dry, silent, nothing changed. The next morning, the town was buzzing. One of the women, the same Ezine, had fallen sick overnight. People said she screamed in her sleep, calling out Amarachi's name. Amarachi said nothing. She only continued her prayers. By the 7th night, the house felt lighter. For the first time in months, Chuka smiled. He came home with a letter, an email printout from the university. He had been offered another scholarship, this time to study at the Graduate School of Economics at the University of Tokyo in Japan. Days later, Chidera too recovered fully and was cleared to rewrite his final exams. Though he didn't make the first-class dream, he graduated with a CGPA of 4.47 and peace in his heart. As for Adaeze, her dreams of nursing faded, but she found a new light in psychology. "Maybe," she said one day, "God wants me to understand pain so I can help others heal." Chief Okoye also found favor again. A former colleague called unexpectedly. Another oil company was opening new positions. He applied. 2 weeks later, he was hired. The Okoye home began to shine again. Not with luxury, but with peace. Amarachi's laughter returned. Softer this time, wiser, she learned to speak less and pray more. One evening, she passed the same road where she had met the beggar. The spot was empty. No one had seen him since. As the sun set over Enugu, the Okoye house glowed faintly again, not from wealth or power, but from the quiet strength that comes after surviving a storm. And though Amarachi never saw the beggar again, she always remembered his words, that some laughter hides envy, and not every smiling face wishes you well.